Laborers in the vineyard. The morning sun had just risen over the vineyard, casting a golden glow on the landowner as he stepped out into the marketplace. His eyes scanned the square, where a group of laborers stood idle, their faces hopeful yet weary. The day's work awaited, and the vineyard needed tending. Approaching the men, the landowner spoke with a voice filled with purpose. "Come, work in my vineyard today," he said. "I will pay you a denarius for your labor." The men nodded eagerly, grateful for the opportunity, and followed him to begin their day's work. As the hours passed and the sun climbed higher, the landowner returned to the marketplace around the third hour. He saw others still standing there, their shoulders slumped and eyes cast down. "You also go into the vineyard," he said to them, "and whatever is right, I will give you." Encouraged, they too went to join the laborers already in the field. The day wore on, the heat growing more intense as time marched toward noon. Yet the landowner returned again, this time around the 6th hour, and once more at the 9th hour. Each time, he saw more men waiting, idle not by choice but by circumstance. His invitation was the same: "You also go into the vineyard." Finally, as the day began to wane and the 11th hour approached, the landowner went out once more. There, he found a small group of men standing with resignation. "Why have you been standing here idle all day long?" he asked, his voice gentle but probing. "Because no one hired us," they answered, their words tinged with defeat. The landowner, undeterred, responded with compassion. "You go into the vineyard too." When evening came and the labor was done, the landowner called his foreman. "Gather the laborers and pay their wages," he instructed, "beginning with those who came last and ending with those who came first." The workers lined up, their faces smudged with the dirt of the day. Those hired at the 11th hour stepped forward, and to their astonishment, each was handed a full denarius. Gratitude and disbelief washed over them as they accepted their wages. But as the line moved on and those hired first approached, they watched the proceedings with growing expectation. Surely, they thought, if the men who had worked only an hour received a denarius, their reward would be greater. Yet when they were handed their wages, it was the same, a single denarius, just as had been agreed at the start of the day. Murmurs of discontent rippled through the group. "These last men have worked only 1 hour," they said, their voices rising in frustration. "And you have made them equal to us, who have borne the burden and the scorching heat of the day." The landowner turned to one of them, his expression calm but firm. "Friend," he said, "I am doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for a denarius? Take what is yours and go. But I wish to give to this last man the same as to you. Is it not lawful for me to do what I wish with what is my own? Or is your eye envious because I am generous?" His words hung in the air, a quiet challenge to their grumbling hearts. The workers fell silent, each reflecting on what they had received. The landowner's generosity was not bound by their expectations or limited to their measures of fairness. It was his to give, freely and abundantly. As the laborers dispersed, some grateful, others deep in thought, the landowner's parting words lingered. "So the last shall be first, and the first last." For those who heard the parable, the lesson was clear. The kingdom of heaven operates on principles far beyond human understanding. It is a realm where grace defies merit, where the generosity of God extends to all, regardless of when they come to the vineyard. And in that truth, there is both challenge and hope, a reminder of the boundless love and mercy of the one who calls us to labor in his field. Death, resurrection foretold. The road stretched long and dusty ahead of them, winding toward Jerusalem. The 12 disciples walked with Jesus, their spirits mixed, some hopeful for what lay ahead, others nervous about the growing tension with the religious authorities. The air was heavy, the weight of the journey pressing down on them with each step. As they traveled, Jesus slowed, gesturing for the group to gather closer. He led them aside, away from the crowd and noise of the road, to speak privately. The disciples stopped, their attention turning fully to him, sensing the seriousness in his demeanor. "Behold," he began, his voice steady but somber, "we are going up to Jerusalem." The words themselves carried a gravity that made their hearts quicken. This was not just another journey. It was the culmination of everything they had been following him toward. But his next words stilled the air around them, their tone heavy with foreknowledge. "The Son of Man will be delivered to the chief priests and scribes," he said, his gaze steady as he looked at each of them. "And they will condemn him to death." The disciples' expressions changed. Some brows furrowed in confusion, others widened in shock. The thought of their teacher, their friend, being taken by the very people who claimed to serve God filled them with unease. Jesus pressed on, his voice unwavering despite the pain carried in his words. "They will hand him over to the Gentiles to mock and scourge and crucify him." Each word landed like a weight on their hearts, the horror of it growing with each detail. The idea of such suffering seemed unbearable, unthinkable. Yet, even as the darkness of his prediction unfolded, there was a glimmer of hope. "And on the third day," Jesus said, his tone lifting ever so slightly, "he will be raised up." The promise of resurrection stood in stark contrast to the suffering he described, a beacon of light amidst the shadow of what was to come. The disciples were left in stunned silence, their minds trying to piece together the meaning of it all. They had seen his miracles, his power over nature, his authority over sickness and sin. And yet, the thought of him being handed over, mocked, and killed, how could such a thing come to pass? Their hearts wrestled with fear and faith, sorrow and trust. As the group resumed their journey, the road to Jerusalem stretched endlessly before them. Jesus walked ahead, his steps steady, his resolve unshaken. Though the disciples struggled to comprehend the depth of his words, they followed him, carrying the weight of his revelation in their hearts. The path ahead was one of suffering and sacrifice, but also of triumph and redemption. In the quiet determination of their teacher, they saw a love and purpose that transcended their understanding, a love willing to endure the unthinkable for the sake of the world. Preferment asked. The road to Jerusalem stretched ahead, the disciples walking closely behind Jesus, their hearts weighed with the gravity of the journey. Amidst the quiet steps and hushed murmurs, a woman approached Jesus with purpose. It was the mother of James and John, the sons of Zebedee, and her expression carried both reverence and an urgent request. Bowing low before him, she looked up and spoke. "Teacher," she began, her voice a mixture of humility and boldness, "I have a request to make of you." Jesus, ever patient, met her gaze with kindness. "What do you wish?" he asked, inviting her to speak freely. "Command that in your kingdom these two sons of mine may sit, one on your right and one on your left," she said, her words filled with ambition for her children. Her plea was sincere, but it revealed a misunderstanding of the nature of the kingdom Jesus spoke of. Jesus turned his eyes to James and John, addressing them directly. "You do not know what you are asking," he said, his tone both gentle and firm. "Are you able to drink the cup that I am about to drink?" The brothers, their loyalty and confidence shining brightly, replied without hesitation, "We are able." Jesus looked at them, his expression thoughtful, as if seeing the path that lay ahead for them. "My cup you shall drink," he said, his words carrying both a promise and a sobering truth. "But to sit on my right and on my left, this is not mine to give, but it is for those for whom it has been prepared by my Father." The conversation did not go unnoticed by the other 10 disciples. When they heard of the request, their faces darkened with indignation. The air grew tense as they murmured among themselves, frustration and jealousy bubbling to the surface. Sensing the growing discord, Jesus called them all together. His voice cut through their rising emotions, calm yet authoritative. "You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great men exercise authority over them," he began, his words drawing on a familiar picture of power and control. The disciples nodded, understanding the world's way of greatness, where status and dominance reign supreme. "It is not this way among you," Jesus said, his tone resolute. The disciples leaned in, their attention fixed on him. "Whoever wishes to become great among you shall be your servant, and whoever wishes to be first among you shall be your slave." The weight of his words pressed on them, flipping their understanding of greatness entirely. It wasn't about positions of honor or displays of power. It was about humility, service, and a willingness to place others above oneself. As the disciples wrestled with this radical idea, Jesus gave them the ultimate example to follow. "Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served," he said, "but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many." The gravity of his mission hung in the air, his words carrying both the call to follow his example and the foreshadowing of the sacrifice he would soon make. The disciples, their earlier disputes now silenced, walked on, their hearts stirred by a vision of a kingdom unlike any they had imagined, a kingdom where true greatness was found in serving others, just as their Lord and Teacher had come to serve them. Sight for the blind. The road from Jericho was alive with the sound of a bustling crowd, a sea of voices rising and falling as people followed Jesus. Dust swirled around their feet as they moved, each person jostling to stay close to him. Some sought healing, others craved his wisdom, and still more simply wanted to witness the miracles they had heard so much about. By the roadside, two blind men sat in the dirt, their clothing worn and their faces turned toward the commotion. Though they couldn't see, their ears caught the murmurs of the crowd, the name of Jesus passing from one person to the next. A spark of hope ignited in their hearts. They had heard of him, the Son of David, the one who could restore sight and heal the broken. This was their chance. "Lord, have mercy on us, Son of David," one of them cried out, his voice raw with desperation. The other joined in, their combined plea cutting through the noise of the throng. The crowd turned toward them with irritation. People frowned, waving their hands dismissively. "Be quiet," someone snapped, as others shook their heads. After all, there were so many others pressing for Jesus' attention. Why should he stop for these two beggars? But the rebuke only strengthened their resolve. With voices that trembled yet refused to waver, they cried out even louder, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us." Amid the noise and motion, Jesus stopped. The crowd stilled, all eyes turning to see what he would do. His gaze softened as he looked toward the two men, their faces etched with both hope and despair. He called them forward. The men rose shakily to their feet, guided by the hands of others, and stood before Jesus. His presence was overwhelming, calm, compassionate, and powerful all at once. "What do you want me to do for you?" he asked, his voice gentle yet direct. "Lord, we want our eyes to be opened," they answered, their voices thick with longing. They had lived in darkness for so long, and now they stood before the one who could bring them into the light. Moved deeply with compassion, Jesus reached out, his hands resting gently on their eyes. The touch was tender, filled with a love that transcended words. In that instant, their world changed. Sight flooded their vision for the first time, colors, shapes, and faces emerging with breathtaking clarity. The crowd, the road, and finally the face of the one who had healed them came into focus. Tears streamed down their faces as they looked at Jesus, their hearts overflowing with gratitude and awe. The crowd murmured in amazement, many moved by the mercy they had just witnessed. The two men, no longer bound by darkness, joined the throng, their steps light and their voices filled with praise. From that moment on, they followed him, their lives forever transformed, not just by the gift of sight, but by the encounter with the one who had seen them, heard them, and had compassion on them when others had turned them away. They walked the road no longer as beggars, but as men filled with purpose, following the light of the world.